Hey friends, Diane here. In season 3 of The Chosen, they introduce a character that I think we all just quickly pass by without really thinking about how dire her situation really was. I'm talking about the person often referred to as the woman with the bleeding disease. You can find her story here in Mark 5:25 through 34. In day 14, titled Desperate Things, the authors remind us that it has been 12 years since she has been suffering, and no doctor, no prayers, no nothing has helped her in any way. As a matter of fact, it only left her in a more desperate situation. Then the authors list a whole bunch of physical problems that would have accompanied such an illness: fatigue, shortness of breath, paleness or yellowing of the skin, dizziness, faintness, and heart irregularities. They also mentioned that the bleeding was only a symptom of some other awful ailment that was lurking beneath the surface. It was a wonder that she was out in public at all, since the physical exertion must have been awful. Yet desperate times calls for desperate measures, right? Sadly, her problems did not stop there. On top of all the physical problems came the emotional, mental, and relational sufferings as well. The authors say, no doubt she had emotionally deteriorated as well, especially considering Jewish women living under Levitical law in the 1st century were considered unclean during menstruation. There was little understanding of germs and viruses in the ancient world, and even fewer medical treatments. But they did know diseases could be spread through blood and other bodily discharges. So the safest thing for a menstruating woman to do was to quarantine for 7 days out of an abundance of caution to protect herself, her family, and her community. Jesus was this woman's last-ditch effort, and by the grace of God, she never gave up, and Jesus did not quickly pass her by. While we may not have as desperate a story as hers, we can learn that God wants us to do all we can to heal any hurt we may be experiencing too. Yet the best thing we can do is reach out to Jesus the way this woman did. Despite the crowd, in spite of the past failed attempts, she kept on believing and kept on seeking this traveling preacher. And her faith did not disappoint. Jesus not only healed her body that day, Jesus restored her back to her family, friends, and community. But even more importantly, Jesus took her desperate earthly thing and turned it into an encounter that would open up the gates of heaven for her. The authors remind us that it was her desperate thing that led her to him, and likely kept her following all the way to heaven, where desperate things will be no more. God will allow what he must allow, and for however long he must allow it, because he has his sights set in heaven, and he desires for our eyes to be fixed there as well. More tomorrow.